Greetings, citizens! Justiguy has arrived. I think most folks will agree that Shadowverse is a pretty alright game. Some might even go as far as to say that it's a pretty good game. At the very least, I think it's fair to say that it's come a long way since its days of being the anime Hearthstone reusing assets from Rage of Bahamut. But couldn't it still be even better than that? Well, I don't know about you, dear viewers, but I certainly think so. And to prove that, I'm here to offer up some suggestions that I happen to think would make the game all the better. Now, so we're clear, I'm not talking so much about mechanics or what kind of cards I'd like to see, though I did do a video like that once, and I may well do one like it again in the future. So what is this video about then? Well, stuff that might make the game more fun, improve the user experience, that kind of thing. Hopefully that makes sense, but if it doesn't, you'll be able to figure it out in about a second. So, without any delays, let's get on with my suggestions. First off, I think it'd be pretty nice to see the old collaborations have reruns of some kind. And hey, to be fair, we did recently get the Grand Blue Fantasy sleeves again when the recent Brigade of the Sky expansion launched, so it's not like there isn't precedent. But, on the other hand, it's been like, what, a whole year since the Fate Stay Night collaboration? Yeah, sure, maybe they're waiting for the second Heaven's Feel movie to do that one again, since the original collaboration was one with the first Heaven's Feel movie, but given the sheer scope of the Fate franchise, that honestly just feels unnecessary. I mean, even if they did want to wait, I doubt players would be bothered if they were to receive multiple opportunities for this stuff. Yeah, sure, part of what makes it sell is that it's a limited time offer, but that attitude's just crappy for the players who start playing after the fact. Plus, since Portalcraft was introduced after all of the previous collaborations, not just the Fate Stay Night one, but the Street Fighter one, and, if it can be called a collaboration, the Rage of Bahamut one, it would be nice to give the newest class a chance to get the goodies that the other ones have. And let's not forget that the Fate Stay Night collaboration wasn't just with leaders, there were cards too. Personally, I'd say there are two ways they could go about the card aspect of those collaborations. And real quick, for those of you who weren't playing the game at the time, how this worked was pretty straightforward and friendly to free players. You played with the corresponding class, you got a Fate Stay Night themed version of whatever card from the most recent expansion, and that was it. You didn't have to pay to get them, you just play and earn them. So it's pretty cool. Unfortunately, the big problem with doing this again would be that it's basically guaranteed that the old set of cards which got Fate Stay Night variants would have rotated into Unlimited by the hypothetical time that they might do another Fate Stay Night collaboration. So the first way they could handle this would be to just say, well, screw it and run the same cards again, plus maybe one for Portal. But where's the fun in that? So I say, with that, they could make a new set of cards based on ones from whatever the newest expansion is, and either add the old ones in as an additional bonus, or maybe, just forget those. That'd suck, but who knows? Regardless, boom, done. Now that's that idea, but to tie into this suggestion, you can probably guess what my second one will be. Because that is more collaborations, and better ones. They're fun, they spice things up. They're also more or less harmless, but they can add just a little more flair to the game that allows players to personalize it to their needs and tastes and all that good stuff. Whether it's letting there be more collaboration variant cards like the Fate Stay Night ones, or even just more collaboration sleeves and all that, I think there's a ton of potential they're really just sitting on by not doing anything more than they have so far. And considering how Grand Blue Fantasy seems to have new collaborations or reruns of older collaborations a lot, I can't imagine getting Shadowverse another one every so often, and maybe making them a little more substantial when they do would be that hard for Psy games. Like, alright, seriously, did you know that Grand Blue Fantasy has had collaborations with the likes of Persona 5, Cardcaptor Sakura, Detective Conan Love Live, Namco Bandai's Tales of franchise, even frickin' Attack on Titan? Not only that, but most, if not all of those collaborations have had decently length, fully voiced story sequences where you can recruit characters from those series to keep forever as well. It's freaking bananas. I mean, let's just look at Zone of the Enders. Well, we got a sleeve and an emblem in Shadowverse, a sleeve and an emblem that, quite honestly, look pretty tacky with the logos slapped on them, if you ask me. At the same time, Grand Blue Fantasy got an exclusive summon from Zone of the Enders, and that's pretty rad. I mean, I'd kind of just be happy with an emblem that, didn't suck, and maybe a card, that was, I don't know, a variant or something, but going that far, meanwhile in Grand Blue Fantasy, that's pretty freaking awesome. And I know Grand Blue Fantasy only gets this kind of thing and as often as it does because it's so wildly successful, but I'd argue that Shadowverse could be more successful if this sort of thing were to happen a little more often on its end of things. I mean, look at me. I got into Shadowverse through the Fate Stay Night collaboration, primarily, so clearly it works. But they can't do all of the work, so what's next on the list? Well, the third suggestion I have is one that isn't really a revolutionary suggestion. In fact, it's one I think that's probably widespread at this point. It's also one that we really need implemented, and the sooner the better. Of course, I am referring to the frequency of the Grand Prix tournaments, whatever, and them being in the same format at that. So, hear me out, and this is mainly directed at you, Cygames, so listen up because I'm definitely totally sure you're watching this video and have gotten this far in it. See, at first the mode was a pretty cool idea. It was a new thing for players to do. They could earn exclusive rewards, they could earn extra stuff. It was awesome, there was cool prizes, oh, it was all good, and then it kept going, and going, and going, and going, and so let's skip ahead to right now. Brigade of the Sky has had 3 of them in the rotation format alone, and that's on top of the unlimited one, and maybe there was a Take-Two one also, I honestly can't remember. There was also a chest event right between the 2 last rotation ones, and, this just gets tiresome. But hey, maybe you wanted this mode to be there more regularly as a way to give the players more stuff to do in the first place. To be fair, I can kind of see that. It's not like there was really a ton of variety before this mode was introduced, so I can understand the idea, kind of. To make an analogy, maybe the idea was that this would be Shadowverse's equivalent of Hearthstone's Tavern Brawls or something. It's clearly not working like that, but maybe it's the thought that counts. It's not, but, I'm trying to be generous here. However, Cygames, if that is the idea, you cannot keep doing them the way you have. So, here's how I think they can be improved. First and foremost, regardless of how often you intend to run them, and I do think that's an issue, you simply cannot reuse the same format 3 times, and especially not back-to-back. You have 3 formats that you can use, that you can alternate between, so for the love of God, alternate between them. Also, just looking at it from the perspective of the potential prizes, I kind of think it'd be a lot cooler to be fighting for a flair that says, Champion of specific tournament, whatever, versus Champion of Rotation Tournament 2, 3, da-da-da-da-da. You know what I mean? Maybe that's just me, but, whatever. I mean, at this point, I'd love to have any championship flair, because I haven't gotten one yet, but, whatever. I digress. Now, second, if these have to be as frequent as they have been, I really don't think it would be unreasonable to give players an extra ticket, maybe even 2, to spend on this event when a new one starts up, because I get Shadowverse is a free-to-play game. I get, you ultimately just want players blowing their money, but you got this option for players to spend tickets, and I really think there's only been, 1 time you've given players an additional ticket, so, stop that. And on a similar note, when it happens to be around the time of an unlimited format one of these, maybe tossing out an unlimited pack as a login bonus, that might be a nice thing to do. And if you're making these a big crazy event, maybe just having an extra login bonus for players, that might be a nice thing to do. It isn't necessarily as necessary, certainly not as necessary as just toning down the frequency of these things, but it'd be a nice way to kind of encourage participation and, make this an event and all that instead of just this tedious grind that you're kind of turning it into. Now, anyway, third, and perhaps most importantly, why not just make some formats completely unique to this mode? Because if you're going to be having these things basically as often or almost as often as Hearthstone has its Tavern Brawls, why not just go all in on that and actually make them as fun to actually play as Hearthstone's Tavern Brawls? I mean, the one that we had for Shadowverse's second birthday was a huge step in the right direction, what with its potential for some ridiculous decks. So how about we get some more of those? Maybe one tournament could force players to only have 1 copy of every card in their deck. Maybe another could force players to create decks using only bronze cards or only silver cards. Maybe you could let players form decks from cards from multiple classes. Maybe you could let players form decks from only neutral cards. Maybe you could force players to make decks of 80 cards instead of 40. Just, be totally nuts. The sky's the limit, and pretty much anything would be better than what we've got now. And with that, I've got one more suggestion. And maybe it's a suggestion that doesn't quite fit into the same category as the other 3, but at the same time, it's actually the one I'd like to see implemented the most out of all of them, so Forgive me for including it if you feel like this one just does not go with the other ones I've suggested so far. You see, last but absolutely not least, I would like to see a Shadowverse expansion of Shadowverse. And if you're staring at your screen right now thinking to yourself, the hell? Well, first off, thanks for sticking around with me this long. I know this is getting a bit long, so I really appreciate that. But anyway, what I mean is an expansion of Shadowverse cards themed around the world of Shadowverse itself. I mean, think about it. As totally great as it is that Shadowverse could very likely survive forever off of the leftovers of Rage of Bahamut and Grand Blue Fantasy. In fact, if it were to become the Hearthstone to Grand Blue Fantasy's World of Warcraft as it goes on, it could probably be super successful going forward. If you ask me, I say there's more than enough of Shadowverse original content and story at this point for at least one expansion's worth of cards that have their basis, story, ideas all come from within Shadowverse. It might not seem like it at first, it may not, I get it. But if you go over all of the story mode, everything that's been talked about, mentioned, implied, there really has been quite a lot, I think. We've seen plenty of NPCs, monsters, and other sort of enemies to make cards out of. There's been various settings, from the kingdoms, the guilds, and the 2 whole worlds that could be used and expand on to make followers, spells, amulets, you name it. I mean, imagine, wouldn't the recurring villager girl from the current storyline make the darndest little neutral follower? Not to mention the actual named characters themselves. Whether they were to even use the specific characters or skip over them entirely and instead draw on characters from their various backstories, I say there's a lot. You've got the princess, you've got the black dragon, you've got Balthazar, you've got Luna's parents. I really and truly do think there's more than enough right now to have a complete set of 100+ cards purely and completely based off of Shadowverse's story mode, and absolutely nothing but. And if it bombs, well, so be it. It's not like there isn't half a dozen expansions worth of Grand Blue and Rage of Bahamut content that I can't fall back on afterwards, so why not give it a try? I really feel like it'd be a great expansion for players of Shadowverse, especially longtime players who are playing Shadowverse for Shadowverse. Yeah, that does contrast my first 2 more collaborations with other IPs points, but I also think that's why it's the most important point. Making Shadowverse more fun and enjoyable to play for Shadowverse's own sake, not because you can wear the skin of something else from something else you find fun, I think that should be the most important thing of all, shouldn't it? But what do I know? I am just a guy, after all, and this has been 4 things that I think would greatly improve the Shadowverse experience. So, hey, what about you, citizens? Am I off my rocker here, or do you think 1, 2, or even all of these ideas would be great to see implemented in the game? Let me know! And sadly, this is not where I'm going to be asking you to subscribe, because let's face it, the activity of this channel does not even close to warrant asking that, so instead, I want to pose a question to you. Did you enjoy this video? Would you like to see more videos like it? To that end, if I were to make more videos like it, how could they be improved from this one? Would you find more of them to be worth subscribing for? You know, tell me, share your thoughts, please. I'm all ears. Personally, I'd much rather hear the answers to those questions, or how you feel about the video, than get subs that I may well not deserve, that I probably don't deserve, so, you know. But, well, you know, I'm just a guy, hardy har har. Anyway, that's a wrap. If you really want to, hey, go for it, subscribe. It's up to you. You can also follow me on Twitter, where these days I mostly post updates about the visual novel that I'm developing. And it should probably say something that this is very likely the first video I've posted where I'll have mentioned the fact that I am a visual novel developer now, so with that in mind, I'm afraid that this is where I bid you citizens farewell!